This One's Wife, like a press release cooked up by ChatGPT. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Martin Robinson writes in the Daily Mail, like a press release cooked up by ChatGPT. New York Times gives withering verdict on Omid Scobie's Bell Endgame in one of the first reviews for the new book. The usually Sussex-sympathising New York Times is withering about Omid Scobie's new book, comparing his writing to an AI bot and declaring that Harry and This One's Wife's favourite journalist does them no favours. In a pithy review of Bell Endgame, the liberal US newspaper claims a chapter on the couple even reads like a press release cooked up by ChatGPT. It also says the book is not all that different from what Harry presented in Spare, and is devoted to setting the record straight on petty slights against the Sussexes. Naturally, this is something that's driven by This One's Wife. She is a particularly petty individual, as I have explained before. The individual that is a greater or ultra, who are facing criticism, just brushes it aside. The titan that they are, either ignoring it or even finding it amusing, that the little people have something to say about them, that their tiny fists are beating against the edifice that is the colossus of the greater or the ultra. They do not get bent out of shape. Nevertheless, when it comes to a mid-range narcissist, such as This One's Wife, these criticisms very much get under her skin. They are fuel, of course, because she's been spoken about, but she cannot stand to be criticised because she truly believes that she is kind, empathic, amazing, beautiful, wonderful, extraordinary, etc., etc. And therefore, for you to suggest the contrary is something that causes her particular concerns, and it really does infuriate her. Accordingly, her narcissism will drive her at any given opportunity to try and address these petty slights. We saw it with archetypes, where she embarked upon addressing particular words which we all recognise must have been used to describe her over the years. Similarly, where certain things that she perceives as problematic towards her, and remember, it's all perceived through the distortion field of her narcissism, where that has happened, she then utilises Scobie as a lieutenant to correct these by proxy, by criticising other people, by scolding other people, by doling out the victimhood and the pity play. The article continues by explaining that America's first review of the book adds, readers hoping for a final death blow of gossip will be disappointed. We've heard much of it before, from Fergie, from Diana, from Charles, from Harry, from Harry, from Harry again. It came as the similarly left-leaning independent news website in the United Kingdom claims he paints This One's Wife and Harry in a relentless saintly light. This demonstrates the idiocy of Omid Scobie. To try and suggest that they are some kind of saints simply does not sit with the evidence. Were he to recognise their flaws and comment upon them, it would provide a much more balanced account and could cause people to take the criticisms of the royal family with a greater degree of sincerity. The fact that it is so partisan, that it's simply members of the royal family accept This One's Wife and Harry bad, This One's Wife and Harry good, means that people just shake their heads and realise you're utterly biased. You must be able to recognise that these two are not decent people. Even if you were to give them the benefit of the doubt on certain events, you must be able to see that the fact that they aired the dirty laundry of the family to make money out of it is seen as unpleasant and despicable in many quarters. You must be able to see that she regularly revises history. You must be able to see, for example, the behaviour where she denied any involvement of your first book and then was forced, as a consequence of litigation, to admit to having provided briefing notes. There is a long list of behaviours of this one's wife and this one, which would enable anybody to point out that they are flawed individuals. Instead, by maintaining that they are some kind of saintly individuals, simply beggars belief and demonstrates the bias of Scobie. It also demonstrates what a shitty journalist he is. The NYT's writer, Eva Wolchover, who co-hosts its Winners and Losers Royal podcast, is critical of Endgame after receiving an advanced copy. She says, whether or not Scobie actively collaborated with this one's wife and Harry for this book, he does them no favours. Their chapter reads like a press release cooked up by GPT and does little to shed light on them as humans. He says the couple, who used to focus on coverage of themselves, now remain blissfully unconcerned. We all know that's errant nonsense, and is just an attempt to nullify threats to control by saying, oh, we don't look at the coverage of ourselves. The woman is a narcissist. She lives for this coverage. It's why she preens and pouts on the red carpet and has to be moved along. It's why she turns up with the rictus grin. It's no good to her if it's not reported on, and she needs to see that report. It's not good enough just to think, oh, I have been reported on. That's thought fuel, which serves a purpose, but is nowhere near as long-lasting or as delicious as the proximate fuel of reading a review of her appearance on the red carpet by some toadying member of the coterie press. What she wants, what she needs, is to see people writing about her, praising her elegance, praising her fashion icon status. She needs that. It's her lifeblood. And therefore, to suggest that she doesn't focus on coverage of herself, it just simply does not sit with her status as a narcissist. Wolchover continues by explaining that Harry's next chapter will focus, among other things, on philanthropic efforts in the military space, while this one's wife, and here Scobie quotes an unnamed source, is building something more accessible, something rooted in her love of details, curating, hosting, life's simple pleasures and family. Miss Wolchover also saves of the author's warnings that the royal family faces extinction. It's hard not to find Scobie's dire predictions a tad hyperbolic. She writes, Scobie defines the term endgame as the final stages of a chess game after most of the pieces have been removed from the board, adding, unless Charles and his heirs act quickly, Scobie underscores, they risk losing the crown, or at the very least any remaining cultural relevance. But there's a paradox here. As long as people are buying books like Scobie's, they're buying the whole lousy operation. The Independent has the first British review of Endgame, giving it 3 stars. Writer Anna Pasternak says that Mr. Scobie is unfailingly sympathetic to the Sussexes. She writes, he does not hold them accountable for anything. He does not, as I had anticipated, demonise Charles or denounce Camilla. I was expecting something different, him possibly laying into evil monarch King Charles and wicked stepmother Queen Camilla. The real royal villain here is William. Scobie also has choice words for the Princess of Wales. She says Scobie points out that Kate has had several rounds of elocution lessons and now sounds posher than her husband. And he waspishly writes out that you'll be unlikely to read in any British newspaper that Kate has had 5 different private secretaries in 6 years, adding that one found the role uninspiring and frustrating. She adds Scobie fully anticipates that he and his book will be discredited in the British media. He is probably right, and he will certainly not be helped by the fact that he paints this one's wife and Harry in a relentless saintly light. Harry is very much presented as the happy prince in his happy place, biking and hiking and taking ice baths. Mornings are for family only, no staff, and the hands-on parents take turns in school drop-offs and pick-ups every day. Scobie's only criticism is their unwise commercial deals, which were made in haste. Accordingly, criticism of the publication, which demonstrates its biased nature and how, of course, he is simply doing what he's been instructed to do by his handler and mistress, although he will repeatedly deny that that's the case. Any criticism of the publication, of course, will be driven at Omid Scobie. The fact is that this one's wife's narcissism will differentiate. And we all recognise that the publication is simply a propaganda exercise, but it nevertheless is entertaining to see the kicking that it's getting in the reviews. I'm HG Tudor. Thank you for listening.